Okay, that's the meeting recording. So I'll now take the sedient of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee meeting on 15th of September 2021. I have apologies from Councillor Campbell. Councillor Brogan? No. Councillor Donnelly? No. I also have apologies from Councillor Ferguson. I can see that we have Councillor Holford present. Councillor Lennon? No. We have Councillor Mars present, Councillor McLachlan and Councillor Nugent. Councillor Warthog, can I just ask, are you just present to observe the meeting today?
No. I'm here as a member, I think. I got an invite to the meeting, so...
So you're not on the membership? I mean, you're welcome to observe the meeting.
Okay.
We also have a number of officers present today. And with that, I'll pass you back to the Chair to commence today's business. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Elizabeth Ann. So, agenda item number 1, do we have any declarations of interest? Nope. Okay. Item number 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Do we have any questions on the minutes of the previous meeting? Nope. Okay. Now, can I have a proposer? I wasn't at the meeting, so I can't propose it myself, really. So we have a proposer and a seconder for the to accept the minutes, please. No?
I'll second Eric.
I need a proposer as well because I wasn't at the meeting.
I think generally you would propose those from the chair.
Well, I would, but I wasn't there, so I can't really propose.
Oh, very good point. Okay, well, I'll propose them.
See what I mean?
Yeah, I'll propose
fantastic.
them.
I'll second it.
I'll second them.
Oh, so we're fighting on for a second. Who was that? Davey was that first, I think.
That's fine.
I'll second it, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3, which is pages 11 to 16, and we have Yvonne Douglas to present. Yvonne.
Thank you, Chair. This is an update on the progress and performance of internal audit in the period 5th of June through to the 27th of August. As per usual, we've attached our kind of key performance indicators in Appendix 1, and paragraph 4.1 takes you through those statistics. Essentially, all targets have been met where applicable. The only one I would bring to the committee's attention is progress with completing the audit plan. We're currently reporting that 20% have been concluded to draft report stage, although 70% of them are in progress. Paragraph 4.1 provides some explanation around that progress, around what the focus has been in the first couple of quarters of the year, around preparing annual reports for the Council and our external clients, but also in continuing to support Council services to disburse COVID grants. All of these have reached a conclusion at this point in time, so the focus is very much back on working on the audit plan that was agreed by the committee, and the intention is to bring a full update on this to the committee in November, together with a plan that will take us through to the end of the financial year. So in terms of the audit assignments that were completed in the period, again, as we would normally do, they're attached to Appendix 2. There's relatively few of those assignments, and in relation to a couple of them, I've provided you with some detail of the outcome of the work that we undertook. So the first one in relation to cash cheques, you'll perhaps remember in June 2021, I came to the committee to advise that we had to change the scope of this work, as actual visits were not practical during the pandemic. So instead we created a dashboard that provides some key information in relation to petty cash, and the intention is to use that for visits in 21-22. I have to say to date that has still not been practical, so it may well be that I need to come back to the committee to present an alternative piece of work for that in 21-22. The second piece of work was in relation to BACS reconciliations, and that was to improve our anti-fraud controls. So the committee will note that we're noting there that we tested over 400,000 payments with a value close to 1.4 billion. I'm pleased to report there were no issues identified, and furthermore, what we've done is embedded those checks now within 4 weekly checks that are undertaken by internal audit. At the foot of that, it's just setting out the work that still needs to be done just to conclude in that piece of work, and that is to look at the controls that we have in place to prevent the creation and authorisation of fraudulent invoices. And the committee will see that coming through in the audit plan that I bring to them in November. Aside from that, there are no other significant points in this report, so I'm asking that the committee note our progress and performance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Yvonne. Do we have any questions, please? No?
No hands, Chair.
Thank you. I propose that we note this report. Could I have a seconder, please? Anyone?
I'll second it, Eric.
Thank you, Julia. Fantastic. So we're all agreed. We move on to item 4, pages 17 to 32. Scott Dunsmore presenting here, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the year-end risk management report and the review of the Council's top risk register. 3 elements to this report. One is looking at the compliance with the Council's risk management strategy within the Council's 5 resources. Second element is looking at progress being made and delivering actions to mitigate top risks. And the main part of the report is covering the update of the Council's strategic top risk register. So section 4 of the report looks at compliance with this strategy. Pleased to report that resources continue to demonstrate full compliance with the key elements of the strategy. In terms of progress in delivering actions to mitigate top risks, that's covered at section 5 of the report. We're noting that there are 85% of actions were completed at 31st of March 21 against an overall target of 90%. So there has been a little bit of slippage due to the pandemic and large. So there are a few actions that will be carried forward to this year's action plan. So the main part of the report is covered at 6.4, and that is summarising the changes to the top risk register this year. So that's on page 18 of the report. So just run down them quickly. The residual score for the COVID-19 pandemic risk has reduced from 20 to 16 this year. That reflects the mitigations that are now in place and the significant steps that have been taken by the Council since the first lockdown. You'll be aware that we've reintroduced a number of services over that period, provided support to the community and businesses and assisted with the government's testing and vaccination programmes. So we are quite a way forward from the first lockdown. A new risk has been added to the register this year, and that is on the Council being materially affected by the recommendations arising from the independent review of adult social care in Scotland. That was the Feely review, which recommended the establishment of a new national care service. Further details on that one's awaited from the Scottish Government, and we do expect that a bill on the reforms will be brought before the Scottish Parliament later in the year. The residual score on EU exit has also reduced from 20 down to 12, and that reflects the fact that the trade deal is now in place, and again, quite a way forward from the initial risk being added to the register. 3 risks have dropped off the register this year as they're no longer deemed to be Council top risks, and those are failure to evidence progress against social care inspectorate requirements, failure to adequately prepare for the national expansion of early years in education and childcare provision, and failure to maintain pupil-teacher ratio. So again, positive in that those risks are now deemed to be at a level where they're no longer a top risk. So taking up account of the changes in section 6.4, the updated risk register for the Council's top risks as covered in Appendix 4 to the report on page 29. The only other parts I wanted to bring to the committee's attention was the Council's risk profile, which is covered at the table at 9.4 in the report. So that provides a breakdown of the number of high, medium and low risks that are on the register. You will see within that table 24% of risks are scored very high, 76% scored high, and no medium level risks are in the register. Low level risks have also been left off the report. I think it's fair to say that this risk exposure is reasonable, given that these are the highest risks faced by the council at present, and that is a slight improvement on the profile from last year. So that really concludes the report. I'd really just asking for the committee to note the compliance levels in the strategy, progress being made in delivering the risk control actions, and the content of the top risk register.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Scott. Do we have any questions?
No hands, Chair.
No. Okay, well, I propose that we note this report. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you, Mary. Right, let's move on then. Item 5, year-end insured risks report, pages 33 to 44, and we have Scott again. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so this is the standard report that we bring to committee, which highlights insurance claims trends for the last 5 years and work ongoing to identify and mitigate insurance hotspots. So the overview of the data is covered at section 4 of this report, and we're basically highlighting there that the overall trend in claims numbers is a downward trend, and 2021 is the lowest level of claims that we have received in the last 5 years. Over that 5-year period, costs have fluctuated. On average, self-insured costs are coming in at £1.95 million. For 2021, costs were slightly above average at £2.01 million. Section 5 of the report provides a direct comparison. Sorry, Councillor, is there a hand up there? I'm just rattling through this.
Yeah, we'll take questions at the end, though, I think.
No worries. No worries.
Points.
Okay, so yeah, section 5 of the report compares numbers and costs for the last 2 years, and that's looking at the 4 main classes of insurance, those being employers' liability claims, public liability, property, and motor. We are noting the report that for 2021, 768 claims were received. That is a reduction of 23% on the previous year. And I mentioned that we were at the lowest number of claims in the last 5 years, and I think I'd just like to bring to the committee's attention that probably the main reason for that is the reduction in council operations in the early part of last year for the first lockdown. In terms of costs, for the last 2 years, we have seen a 3% increase on costs, so the total's coming in at 2.01 million. In the previous year, it was 1.9 million. So I think, again, positive in that we are seeing downward trends in numbers across all 4 classes. The only area that I would like to sort of flag up where we've seen a slight increase in costs is on public liability claims. The main reason for that is that we have seen an increase in the value of tripping claims within community and enterprise resources. What I would flag up on that particular point is that the costs are based upon both paid and outstanding claims, and we do anticipate that the value will drop as some of these claims are, in some cases, refused and will be closed off. So in terms of work to mitigate insured losses, we are flagging up in section 7 of the report that a change in driver behaviour training programme has been developed by Employee Development, and we're looking for this to be rolled out to all council drivers. There is some quite hard-hitting material in there about distractions while people are driving, dangers of using mobile phones and the like. So yeah, it is an area where we've seen some serious incidents in the past, and we're hoping that the training materials that's been produced there will help mitigate the number and cost of motor insurance claims. The only other thing that I want to flag up in terms of actions being taken to mitigate insured losses is that we are doing some work with the council's insurers just now, where they're reviewing the claims data over the last couple of years where they will flag up similar types of claims and high value claims and where they're originating. They call these claims leakage reports. And once we've got sight of them, we will be doing some further work with resources to do a bit of analysis on that and, again, implement some action plans to try and tackle some of the identified problem areas. In terms of financial implications of the report, the main point I would like to bring to the committee's attention is that the total cost of loss for 2021 is coming in at £3.9 million. Total cost of loss covers both the self-insured claims costs and the cost of insurance premiums. That has increased from £3.5 million the previous year, and we have seen some increases in premiums due to the current market conditions. So really, we're just asking for the committee to note the content of the report and the actions that we're looking to take to try and tackle some of those insurance hotspot areas.
Okay, thank you. Now, questions. Mary, you had your hand up for ages, but we've lost it. Are you still there?
I came in far too soon, Peter, and I'm sorry if I took you off your stride. It was 2 points. Would the downward trend, would that have anything to do with COVID hitting those figures where we ended up with a downward trend with trips and falls claims? And 2, I have to commend the department for the training and bringing it to the attention of staff about using mobile phones while they're driving and things. I don't know about anybody else, but I do know people who have been using a mobile phone while they're driving, and unfortunately they lost their life. So it is a very, very serious one, and it's good that we're on top of that to try and get staff not, be aware of the pitfalls of what they should be, not to take their concentration away from the road when they're driving. So well done to the department for that.
Agree with you wholeheartedly on that, Mary. Scott, have you got like to reply to Mary's questions, please?
Thanks, Councillor. I think you're absolutely right on the mobile phone front. There's a lot of other material in the training that we've developed that flags up other issues around why accidents happen, and we're just trying to sort of tackle that. And sometimes it does need the hard-hitting material. There is one video that shows an individual using a mobile phone in a head-on collision and stuff like that. So. It's an important one that we want to get across. Coming back to your earlier point around the reason for the reduction in claims, I think, well, there was 2 parts to your question. I think, firstly, the overall reduction, as I said, it is the lowest level we've seen in the last 5 years. So there is no doubt that the early part of the lockdown, when some vehicles were off the road, there was less operations being undertaken and the like. That's definitely impacted on the overall number. In terms of the roads claims, I don't know any particular reason why we've seen an increase there. It might be as simple as the fact that people were out doing more walking at the start of lockdown and things like that. So, as I say, I think those values that we've seen on those tripping cases are likely to fall as these cases are reviewed. Without going into too much detail, in the event that we've got a reasonable inspection programme in place and that we have a repair system in place for defects, then quite a number of these cases are repudiated. So we do envisage that the overall cost will reduce on those claims.
Thanks for that, Peter.
Thank you.
And Julia, you have a question?
Thank you. This may not be a question that Scott's able to answer, but I'm wondering in terms of looking at a reduction in insurance claims for motor vehicles, do we do anything else besides the training? Do we have tachographs in the vehicles so that we're able to detect aggressive or inconsiderate driving? And do we have a default of do we have to make that journey? And I realise a lot of work across the council will have to be done physically, but in terms of our eco credentials as well. The most eco-friendly journey is the one you don't have to make, rather than trying to make it more eco-friendly. So I'm wondering if those sort of policies are in place.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Mars. I think just a couple of things that you touched on there, the telematics side of things in vehicles. So the majority of the council's fleet now does have telematics in it, and there's quite a lot of useful information in there on the speed of a vehicle. There's reports that can be generated to show harsh acceleration, harsh braking. So there's quite a lot of work going on through the council's driver safety group, and there is a speeding campaign that we've got on the go just now, where reports will be provided to managers, and those reports can identify when a vehicle's speeding, what road it's on at the time, so we know exactly what's going on. And again, steps are being taken to address that with the drivers that are maybe breaching speeding. There's a lot of other things on the go that we have relaunched a driver's handbook and the like that tells drivers what they should and should not be doing when they're driving. And coming back to your point, is there anything else in place? There is as well as the driver safety group, there's a kind of subgroup that we have where I review like more serious accidents with the council's fleet manager and health and safety manager, and we will work with resources to try and address issues that are maybe coming out of individual incidents. As well as that, there are some cases that will go to fact finding if there's extreme circumstances, more serious accidents and multiple accidents. So we may put these to personnel for fact finding. So there's a lot going on, and it is an area that I'm hoping that we can see an improvement going forward when we deliver this training.
Okay, your hand's still up, Julia. You wanted to come back, or are you done? Okay, lovely. In that case, I move that we note this report. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair. And can I also use the opportunity to apologise to Scott? I was calling him Peter. I do apologise.
That's quite all right, Councillor. I've been called worse.
True. Okay. Thank you very much. If we move on to agenda item number 6, National Frauds Initiative, pages 45 to 54, and Yvonne Douglas is going to present this for us. Yvonne.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an update on the NFI exercise. Again, the committee will be used to seeing reports on this. So this report sets out the matches that have come back to us from the 2021 NFI exercise. The background of the report, just a reminder as to what the NFI is, and this data was provided back in the last quarter of 2020. Our data has now been matched with a large number of public sector organisations, and the resulting matches have come back to us. So again, as a reminder, in Appendix 1 is a list of all the matches that are undertaken, and Appendix 2 then sets out the actual matches that have come back to us. And what it also does is provides a comparison to the matches that came back from the last full exercise in 2018-19. So the report takes you through broadly the reasons that we are assuming at the outset for the significant decreases in relation to housing benefit. At this point, it's been attributed to the move to universal credit, which is now managed by DWP. And going the other way, the significant percentage increase in the number of blue badges that have matched to DWP deceased records. At this point in time, we're assuming it's a timing issue, but both of these issues will be looked at again as we progress through investigations. So of those investigations that are set out in Appendix 2, which total 17,113, Appendix 3 then sets out what we've identified as being a target number of investigations. It's simply not practical to look at all 17,000 matches and investigate each of these in detail. So what we use is the risk assessment that's provided by the NFI exercise, which puts the matches into categories of high, medium and low, and those that are designated as being high matches are the ones that you'll see in Appendix 3, and they total 9,954. Now, I should also say at this point that it's unlikely that we will look at 9,954, because once we start to investigate these, we very often find that although it's a match, it's neither fraud nor error, and we'll continue to revise the target number of investigations I think that's important to bear in mind given the pressures that all council services are under at this point in time. We don't want to use time investigating matches that are not going to provide an outcome. We'll continue to provide progress reports to the committee as we normally do. Internal Audit leading the facilitation of this exercise, so we'll be responsible for bringing it to a successful conclusion at the end of March. And a final report will come to the committee to give you a report on the actual outcomes and also any fraud or error that's been identified as a result of the investigations. So in the interim, I'm asking that you note the results of the matching exercise, and you also note the target number of investigations that at this point in time we intend to take forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Yvonne. Have we any questions? Don't see any hands up. No?
No hands, Chair.
Okay, in that case, I propose that we note this. Can I have a seconder, please? Anyone?
I'll second.
I'll second, sorry.
Julia's in there first, but there we are. Thank you.
Julia, right.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to item number 7, Fraud Statistics Annual Report, and we have Yvonne again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual report on the fraud stats for 2021, and as you'll be used to seeing, what it does is provides the current year figures and gives you the comparison to the previous year. The background just sets out the basis for collating those statistics. I think the important point is it's been done on a consistent basis, so it means that 2020 and 2021 are comparable. Probably worth drawing your attention to 3.5 because I think that's a really important point. We're noting at 3.5 that all types of fraud investigations have been significantly impacted by the pandemic. But we're also noting that our processes haven't changed. So there's no change to our anti-fraud approach or our zero tolerance approach. What has been impacted is our ability to progress a lot of this to a conclusion as quickly as we would normally. And I think probably worth bearing that in mind as you start to look at the figures that are detailed in section 4 of the report. Section 4 sets out the results, and the first one of those is at 4.3, and that's the fraud caseload. And that just takes you through the figures in terms of the open cases, the cases that were added in the year, and the cases that were closed in the period. So the point that I was making around the impact of the pandemic, you can see that in terms of the concerns that have reported. They were 26 in the year to March 21, and the comparable figure for the previous year was 137. And similarly, cases closed in that period was 38, and the comparable period was 70. Table 2 then takes you through the closed cases, so that's looking at the figure of 38, which is in bold in Table 1, and that gives you a breakdown of what actually was the final outcome. So of the 38 cases that were closed, 24 of those were founded. There was 5 where we had insufficient information to reach a conclusion, and there was 9 on investigation or unfounded. And then Table 3 then takes the founded allegations, so again, the items that are in bold in Table 2. So the 24 cases that were founded in Table 3 at 4.7, you have a breakdown of that. And of those 24 cases, we're saying 23 of those were external and 1 was internal. And the one internal involved a council employee, but we weren't able to identify the person who was involved, and it was around the theft of equipment. In terms of the fraud work, it's not just investigation, there's improvement plans. So what we try to look at is where our controls need to be improved or amended to prevent the same situation occurring again. And 5.1 deals with that. The improvement plan that's listed there with the 7 separate actions, that relates to the case that I've just referred to around the theft of equipment. And what we've done is thought to tighten internal controls, a lot of them common sense. So a lot of them is just about reinforcing and reiterating what was already the process, but in this instance, it wasn't completely adhered to. In terms of other anti-fraud work that's ongoing, that's detailed within the other implications section. So we continue to do self-assessment exercises to make sure that when we compare ourselves to good practice, our fraud policies and procedures comply with that. We also continue to look at the emerging fraud risks as a result of the pandemic, and you'll see that the routine audit plan will continue to pick up testing in those areas so that we get assurance that our processes continue to embed all the relevant internal controls. And the last point around other work that's ongoing is the work that's ongoing within the Council's Serious and Organised Crime Working Group. There's an action plan that's been delivered by that group as well, and I'll continue to report any relevant actions within the fraud report to the committee. So for the purposes of this report, I'm really just asking that you note the contents in the interim, and for the to note the work that remains in progress, and our continuing anti-fraud approach and zero tolerance to fraud. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Yvonne. Have we got any questions from anybody? Don't see any hands raised.
No hands,
And my
Chair.
apologies if you hear drilling in the background, because there's somebody at the other side of the wall here is drilling holes as I talk. I have a question actually though. The theft of equipment. Why does theft of equipment become fraud? Larceny rather than fraud, I would have thought, but nonetheless.
It is captured within these because what we also try to capture is where there's been a failure in internal controls. So the fraud statistics also capture issues where our internal controls need to be tightened, and that's an internal audit role to go in and look at the processes and procedures and how we can improve or change those to reduce or eliminate these opportunities in the future.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I move that we note this report. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, so if we move on, item number 8, Financial Management Code, pages 61 to 70, and we have Jackie Taylor. Jackie.
Thanks, Chair. So this is a report for noting, and it revolves around the Financial Management Code, the FM code, which has been introduced by SIPFA. This code is intended to be guidance for councils to look at good and sustainable financial management, and it should allow us to help demonstrate our financial sustainability. Now, 2020-21, the last financial year, was the shadow year for implementing the FM code, and it had been suggested that by the end of last financial year, we should be able to demonstrate that we were working towards full implementation of the code. So to meet those requirements in the shadow year, we undertook a review of the FM code and we assessed our position in relation to the principles of the code. So at section 4 on page 62, I've summarised what the principles are within the code, and they're detailed there for you in the bullets at 4.1. And that includes organisational leadership, accountability and medium-term financial planning, transparency in financial management, adherence to professional standards and political scrutiny. And obviously the long-term sustainability of local services is at the heart of financial management processes. Section 5 covers the self-assessment that we've undertaken to see our position in relation to the code, and full details are included in Appendix 1 of that self-assessment. But the conclusion at Section 5.4 is that of the 17 criteria that are mentioned within the code, we fully embedded 14 as part of our normal business, which is a positive position in the shadow year of implementation. It highlights that we're already showing a strong approach to financial management and financial resilience, and we can demonstrate value for money, governance and adherence to professional guidance. There are 3 criteria that we're looking to embed into our activity, and they're noted in Appendix 1. They revolve around us reviewing a toolkit which has been issued by SIPFA on financial resilience and embedding our existing processes around consultation on our longer term financial plans and also around options appraisal. So as I say, Appendix 1 from page 65 gives the detail of our self-assessment that's been summarised within the report. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Anybody would like to ask any questions of Jackie?
No hands, Chair.
Can I just ask one brief question then? How much were we already doing the things that are required in here, and did this bring up any sort of serious failings that we had to change?
As you'd probably imagine, looking at the kind of criteria and the principles here, this is already something that is very much at the heart of what we do anyway, in terms of our reporting, our planning, our transparency. So we weren't expecting to see any surprises, and we didn't, to be honest. The actions that we are undertaking are really in relation to things that we're either already doing and we want to fully embed, or in relation to this toolkit that's only recently been been available. So no, nothing of any great surprise at all.
Well, that's great. It's credit to you and Paul and all your team. Thank you very much. I propose we note this report. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second you.
Thank you, Mary. And if we move on to item 9, Audit Scotland Financial Overview, pages 71 to 76. And again, we have Jackie. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Chair. You will be used to seeing these reports coming to this committee. We report annually on the financial overview report that Audit Scotland complete. This is in relation to 2019-20 financial year, so it is backward looking, just something to remember as we go through the kind of highlights here. The link to the report is included in the report for your information. Section 3.3 just highlights the areas that are covered within the Audit Scotland report, and I'll cover them in a little bit more detail from section 4 onwards, which is on page 72. So part 1 of the Audit Scotland report covers council's income in 2019-20. So this is obviously across all Scottish local authorities, and some of the highlights are extracted out there in those bullets. Again, probably nothing that is of any great surprise to anybody. They refer and comment on the funding that councils have received and the fact that much of the extra funding that we have received in that year was in relation to specific funding sources, including early learning and childcare. It also makes comment on the movement that local authorities have seen in their funding over recent years. Council tax changes is also referenced because you'll recall in 2019-20 there were still changes being made to council tax levels, with all councils choosing to increase council tax. Section 5 of our report picks up on the Audit Scotland's Part 2, which is about the 2019-20 Council's financial position. And again, you would see things highlighted here that won't be of any great surprise, including references to funding gaps that councils have and that they're being managed mainly through savings. COVID at that point, at the end of 2019-20, wasn't a significant factor in councils' accounts. There's also reference to councils that have used their reserves. 22 councils increased their usable revenue reserves and 17 councils decreased their general fund reserve over the last 3 years. But the point that's being made by Audit Scotland there was that no council was in a position where the rate of use of reserves would eliminate their total general fund within a 3-year period. Positively, councils also recorded the highest level of capital expenditure over the last 5 years. And if I move over to page 73 at the top of the page, it also highlights that councils increased their net debt during that period as well, which is probably likely to their increased capital expenditure. Section 6 of our report covers the council's financial outlook section of the Audit Scotland report. And again, bearing in mind this is still in relation to 1920 and looking forward, there are many references to COVID and what the implications of COVID would be. This does feel a little bit historical now that we're now 18 months on in the pandemic. But again, highlights being made in that outlook section are around government funding for councils and the increase in cash terms, and that being related to specific grants in relation to early learning and childcare. The remainder of page 73 is really referring to COVID and the comments that Audit Scotland were making around that. Section 7 of our report picks up the references to the IJBs, the Integrated Joint Boards overview. And again, quite a similar message to what local authorities had been reporting. In 2019-20, funding did increase to IJBs. 16 of the 30 IJBs did report a deficit, whilst those that are reporting surpluses or break-even had said that they wouldn't be able to do that without additional funding from their partners. There was much variation in how IJBs performed against meeting their planned savings as well, and that the reserves generally had decreased in 2019-20 for IJBs. Also comments in relation to COVID and for IJBs, particularly around prior to COVID, the budget gaps had reduced for IJBs, but as at October 2020, COVID was obviously playing a part for IJBs around health and social care, with quite significant sums being estimated in terms of cost. Section 8 of our report picks up where there's specific mention of the council within the financial overview report. Whilst there's a lot of information and data within the overview report, there are only 2 tables where specific reference to South Lanarkshire Council and our performance is mentioned. And that is in the movement in general fund balances and also in the percentage movement in net debt. And I can report that South Lanarkshire Council is in the main grouping of councils for both of those. Similarly, section 9, where the IJB is mentioned, we've pulled out that point there, and that is in relation to the movement in the general fund reserve there too. So quite a lot in the actual overview report, but hopefully that summary has given you a highlight of the information within Audit Scotland's report. But I'm happy to take any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Jackie. Have we any questions?
No hands, Chair.
Seems you have sated everybody's demands. So that's fantastic. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
So if we move on to item 10, Audit Scotland Report, Digital Progress in Local Government, pages 77 to 82, and we have Brian Tees. Brian.
Did you move 9?
Oh, good point. Very good point. No, I didn't. I was doing well until then, wasn't I? Sorry, I would propose we note item 9. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you, Mary. Right. Now we'll move on to item 10. Brian. Hello, is Brian here?
Brian, I think you're on mute.
Can't see Brian on my screen, actually.
Chair, it's Paul. I can see Brian. I think Brian's struggling to get off mute.
Right.
Okay, Brian, do you want to try leaving the meeting and coming back on? Either that, Chair, I'm happy just to talk through give an overview of the paper.
Maybe that might be the best way to proceed, actually, if that's okay with you, Paul.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So Audit Scotland have produced this paper that's entitled Digital Progress in Local Government. And again, as is the case with many Audit Scotland reports this year and at the tail end of last year, there is an emphasis in here on the impact of COVID. What you can see on the second page of the paper around key messages, and you can see them labelled there. This is on page 78 of your pack. It's section 4. It's labelled Key Messages 1 through to 6. And these are the main issues that are emerging from that Audit Scotland document. So what the paper then goes on to do, and we do this with all of these Audit Scotland reports, is what Brian's done is to take each of the Audit Scotland recommendations in relation to those messages, and he's identified what the Council's position is against each of them and what action is required, if any. So if you go to page 79, you can see actions there identified against those key messages, and that runs through in the table that continues over onto page 80. So what's asked for, Chair, is that the paper is noted. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Paul. There is an irony that our head of IT has IT issues, but there we are.
Yeah, the irony was not lost on me.
Apologies, Chair. I could not come off mute there, so I had to leave and rejoin. So apologies, but I could hear Paul all the way through. So thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions? No, don't see any hands up. Nope. Okay, in that case, I'll try and remember this time. Can I move that we note this paper? Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you again, Mary. That's fantastic. Right, we move forward to item 11, Forward Programme for Future Meetings 83 to 86, and we have Elizabeth Ann McGonigal to report. Elizabeth Ann.
Thank you, Chair. This is a standard report that comes to each meeting of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee, as detailed in the background at section 3.1. And the purpose of the report is to advise members of the forward programme for meetings of the committee, and that's taking us up to January 2022, and also to invite members to suggest topics for inclusion. So the forward programme is detailed at the appendix on page 85, and just asking the committee to note the forward programme for the meetings of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee to January 2022. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Elizabeth Ann. Do we have any questions or comments? In that case, I propose we move this, we note this paper. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you again, Mary. That's fantastic. Which brings us to item 12, urgent business. I have no urgent business to bring, so I'll bring this meeting to a close and thank you all for attending. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.